All right, thank you everyone for coming today. It's 6 o'clock, so we're going to get started. So if you can find a seat in one of the open chairs, if not, we can grab some additional chairs out of the closet back there. I'm Nancy Winandy, CEO of Yankton Thrive, and we are proud to be hosting this informative session today to learn about some of the topics that the Yankton County Commission will be considering at their June 30th meeting. This is meant to talk about both sides of the issue. It is not for or against. It is to provide you the opportunity to learn more, to ask questions of the people who are in the room, and admittedly, they might not have all of the answers that you are looking for today. But we just want to continue to have an open dialogue so that you can provide feedback to your commissioners. I have a form here, if you want to pick one up when you leave, that basically says, if you want to provide feedback to all 5 commissioners, Gary Vedder's contact information is the person who you would email, and then he will share it with all 5 people. So Gary's here in the room with us today to hear the information, but we want him to be the primary contact so all 5 commissioners can get the information. A little housekeeping information. Bathrooms are down the hall that direction, so feel free if you need to get up during any of the presentations to do that. Snacks over there, water on the table, and if you're looking for a different snack, you are welcome to go into the lounge area and enjoy that while you're here as well. And I do want to apologize that I might sound a little lispy today. I had an unexpected opportunity to go to the dentist, so I had a cavity filled this afternoon, so half of my face is numb still at this point. So we are going to start the educational opportunity today with Mike Bockerny. He is the Executive Director of the Economic Development Professionals Association. He formerly was my same position up in Aberdeen, so he has a lot of longevity of working with community and understanding political issues like this. And his topic is going to be Senate Bill 96. And when he is done presenting, we will have a question and answer session for that. And then we will have different presenters for the other 2 topics. So if you have questions on the other topics, we ask you to please hold those until that presenter has provided their information. So with that, Mike, I'd like to welcome you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? We good in the back? Okay, perfect. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Nancy set this up well. I'm only going to talk about Senate Bill 96, so we're going to stay specifically on that. I know there are some other components of property tax relief, but tonight only going to talk about Senate Bill 96, because that is something, a local control deal that you all have the opportunity to either enact or not enact. Just leave things as they are. So a couple things. First off, I don't think Senate Bill 96 is a perfect solution. There probably isn't a perfect solution, and I would tell you I think the past 5 to 6 years probably shows that. There's been a lot of summer studies by the legislature. There's been a ton of discussion. I can't tell you how many bills have been brought forward, and this is one of the few that actually passed. And it is truly a local control issue, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So what this does very simply is to authorize as a county, like you guys, Yankton County, to impose a half penny sales tax countywide that would be dedicated solely to owner-occupied property tax relief. So just so everybody understands, owner-occupied means the house that you own and you live in. You have to own it, that's your primary residence. This would be applied to essentially buy down property taxes on all of the folks that would live in your county if you choose to enact this. I'm going to talk about some basic functionality of Senate Bill 96. Then I'm going to talk about the pros, and then I'm going to talk about some cons. What I'm not going to do is give you any opinion on this. That's not what I'm here to do tonight. That is your decision. You folks all live here. That is completely 100% your decision. So, SB96 does not automatically raise a tax. You, your commission, and I'll talk about some of the ways this can happen, have to enact it. It's not automatic. You have to enact it if you choose to, okay? Every dollar that is collected, if you enact this, must and can only be used to buy down owner-occupied property taxes for the residents in this county only. Not $1 can be used for any other purpose other than that if you enact this, and it can also not go outside of the boundaries of Yankton County. It can only be utilized within Yankton County, period. The county cannot use the revenue for any new spending programs or to expand the government, period. There are no exceptions. Again, it can only be utilized for owner-occupied property tax relief. Let's talk about some of the pros to this. One of the main pros is this would allow non-residents to help pay here. It would buy down your property taxes. I'll give you an obvious example. I live in Aberdeen. Nancy asked me to come down because of the association I run, and what I do is I try to maximize my travel time, so tonight I'm staying here in Yankton. If this existed right now, you would get me to pay an additional half penny on everything that I bought while I was in your county. Okay, so people who come and visit, pass through, buy something, like me, I would leave my money here and I would help you buy down your property taxes if you choose to enact this. So again, you have non-residents help pay for some of your property taxes. Talk a little bit about Yankton County. You guys are a unique county when it comes to Senate Bill 96 because you do have some attractions that bring people here. You have some very good options where other counties, we have 66 counties across the state of South Dakota. Some of them would be more heavily set up like you guys to attract tourists and or vacationers, etc. You've obviously got Lewis and Clark, you got the dam, that brings a lot of people for recreation, fishing, a lot of different things like that. You've got sporting events and tournaments because you are a little bit of a larger community. You can attract some of those. You are a regional attraction from a shopping standpoint, and also healthcare. So people come into your community and they would be expending dollars and leaving their dollars here if you chose to enact this. Simply captures revenue from visitors. One of the other pros of this is the definition of local control, okay? Beer didn't mandate anything. They gave you the option. Here's how the option works. The county commission and or the county residents decide if you want to do this. And I'll share a little bit on how this could happen. First off, the commission could pass it. They could pass it and say, we're going to enact this. And it's going to take effect. Okay? Now, the voters have the right to refer to a vote any action of the county commission. So if some folks didn't like, let's assume for a second that the commission decided, yes, we're gonna move this forward, we want to do this. It is the right of the folks in Yankton County to try to gather signatures and refer that decision, which then would move to a public vote. And the residents would have to vote whether or not they wanted to, have this move forward. The county commission could choose to say, yes, we want to do this, but we want all of the voters in Yankton County to vote on it. So the commission could say, we're going to put this on the ballot, and and let everybody, all the residents of Yankton County have their say, have their voice. You would get to vote on it, okay? If the county commission chooses not to do anything with it, and some folks in Yankton County decide, you know what, we would like to have this, the residents would have the ability to gather the signatures and place it on the ballot themselves. Okay, so those are the ways that this could happen. Okay, I would tell you that I think this is very smart that you're having this event tonight, so you all can learn about it, and then your commission can discuss, your folks in economic development, your city, because it's going to affect everybody. You're learning and you're listening. Great move, great idea. So everybody knows how this works. Okay, another pro of this, diversifies revenue source a little bit from how the property taxes function, how everything functions. This is another revenue source. Okay, and again, it captures a bit of outside revenue that would come into your county. So that's a very positive thing. Let's talk about some cons, some things that maybe might be a little bit challenging. One of the largest ones is this benefits people who own their home, owner occupied. This does nothing for renters, okay? I don't know what your breakdown in Yankton County is versus percentage of people who own a home that live here versus those that rent. I can tell you as a state, it's up for round numbers, it's about 60-40. 60% own, 40% rent. Okay, so you gotta keep that in mind. If you're a renter, this isn't gonna do anything for you. It's going to affect owner-occupied property taxes only. A con is, I talked a lot about capturing visitor dollars. Visitors have to pay this. So you could have some folks that says, geez, it got expensive to go to Yankton County, or a little more expensive. Half penny, do a lot of people think that? I don't know. I haven't surveyed people, I can't tell you one way or the other. Another con is you all have to remember that you're enacting this upon yourself. So you all pay an extra half penny as well. It goes on everybody. So even if you live here, you live in Yankton County, anything you buy anywhere in the county, you all are also paying an extra half penny sales tax every time you go and purchase something, okay? It is possible that some homeowners may actually save less in property taxes than they would pay through the additional sales tax. It's possible. That's not going to be a very large percentage of people, but it is possible depending on what that household spends their dollars on. One of the other cons is this tax is universally applied across everything. There are no exceptions. It's all or nothing. You can't choose to exclude something, okay? So, one of the big topics at the legislature for a number of years has been, we are one of the few states left in the nation that tax groceries. This is going to make groceries more expensive. So one of the potential cons is, or one of the cons would be, for those individuals who are on a very tight fixed income, who do struggle to make ends meet all the time, this would put an additional half penny on the items that they would go and purchase. Okay, so that is something also to keep in mind. Okay, another con is not every county benefits equally. It'll be very interesting to see what counties choose to adopt this in the state of South Dakota and which ones don't. Again, I mentioned this earlier, you guys are a little bit unique in a good way where you do attract a lot of outside visitors. Okay, not every county is going to do that. You guys are really somewhere in the middle. You're certainly not at the level of tourism attraction as Black Hills. You're not going to attract as many folks as Minnehaha County, but you are going to attract significantly higher number than the majority of the other counties across the state of South Dakota. One thing to remember is, another potential con here, as other counties adopt this, okay, so if you have people in this city or county, which I know you have, because we all have it, but if you go to a larger county that might have, say, a Costco, where you don't, and you go up there and you spend money at Costco, which Costco's are great, by the way, not beating on Costco, it's just an example, and this is how life works. It could cost you more money in other counties as well. So you gotta keep that in mind, okay? At the end of the day, we can make estimates, or I'll call it an educated guess, on what we think, how this might affect you in Yankton County. And there actually is a map out there, an interactive map, and I can talk a little bit about that, and I'm happy to share the link because it's public. Happy to talk to anybody afterwards tonight, and I can show you exactly how this breaks down. But nobody really truly knows. There's not a 100% known fact that I can stand up here, anybody can stand up here and say, listen, if you enact this, it's going to save you, I'm just picking on you because you're looking at me and sitting right up here in front, it's going to save you this amount of money. And I also can't tell you exactly how much more tax you're going to pay by the half penny and what that trade-off would be. Nobody knows that for sure because we have no data because this doesn't exist. But we do have some pretty good educated guesses. Okay? A couple of key implementation points. First off, if you decide to do this, and I'm not going to get in the weeds here, but we have to comply with this little thing that's acronymed SUDA in the state of South Dakota. That is something that we have to comply with. So you can only start a new sales tax on either January or July 1st every year. So if your commission passes this next week, that doesn't mean that the week following everybody's going to be paying a half penny. You have to start it on those times that you can in order for us to comply legally with SUDA. And if you want to learn more about that, actually that's a super boring topic, but it's actually very important for South Dakota. Talk to me afterwards. I can give you the short story of that. Okay, here's another couple key things. I'm sure everybody in this room knows that you actually pay your property taxes in arrears. Okay, so if you enact this, you actually are not going to see any property tax reduction from the enactment of Senate Bill 96 for a year. You have to wait a year. So if you enacted it, just for an example here to make this very clear, if the commission enacted it and it went into effect on January 1st of 2027, nobody in Yankton County is going to see a reduction on your property taxes until 2028. Okay, because we pay our property taxes in arrears. So just want everybody to be fully aware of how that works. I think it's very clear that there is no silver bullet to property tax, owner-occupied property tax relief in the state of South Dakota. It's just how we have our state set up. Bottom line is we don't have a state income tax. We don't have business corporate income tax. We don't have all these other taxes that a lot of other states have. We have relied and set ourselves up to rely on owner-occupied ag land and commercial and industrial property taxes to pay for the basic needs that we have had and have on an annual basis. That's generally how that stuff works. So there's trade-offs. There's always going to be trade-offs. There's probably not a perfect system. I would tell you I think it's pretty logical if there was a perfect system, we'd probably have it. You know, but what we have is what we have, and that's what we've got. So I feel like I went through that really fast, and I tried to really hit the high points and give you the basic pros and cons. But I don't want to stand up here and just ramble forever and get in the weeds. So that's what I've got for you. We Q&A now.
Questions, yeah. If
anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If you have tech, I'll be right there. You're first, you're second. Hang on, sorry. if I tell you that I don't know the answer, I'm not an expert on this. I only really know one person who I would consider to be a true well, actually two or three, that would be a true expert. And if you have a technical implementation question, my answer to your technical implementation question will be, you've got to talk to the Department of Revenue, because they are the experts on the ins and outs of how these things function. And that would be a function of your county commission, and probably would be put on the shoulders of Mr. Better. I'm assuming, but that's neither here nor there. You raised your hand first, ma'am.
That probably falls under what you just said, ask revenue. I want to just explain it simply. So you collect this tax, it goes into a fund, but when I get my tax bill, how does it show up that they're reduced?
That is a technical implementation question. Yeah, I will tell you that Senate Bill 96 reduces the county portion of your property taxes, because there's all these other breakdowns. If you look at your property tax bill, which you can go and get, again, go see Gary. Gary, you're gonna be a busy guy tomorrow, I'm sorry. But you can get that breakdown, and it shows, you know, whatever you've got here, schools, different levies on the schools. I think there's a special ed levy. You might have other special levies that are in your community, county, city, how it breaks down. It all works out in the end, you know, whatever part you bring down, but this would bring down the county portion on the line item on your statement. You were second.
I'm just going to read this because I don't understand. Notwithstanding the provisions of this section, which is section 7, the governing body may allocate monies into county's property tax reduction fund in the amount necessary to implement the requirements of this chapter, not to exceed 2% of all monies deposited in the fund during the first year in which the county imposes a gross receipts tax, and not to exceed $20,000 in each year thereafter. What is the meaning behind that?
I would tell you that that's partially a implementation question, but if I recall correctly from the discussions while this was happening, there is some required paperwork that the county is gonna have to do, and I believe that's to cover staffing expenses if it's needed. So it puts a cap on what can be collected, so that it can't just go crazy. They wanted to cap it to make sure that everybody understood up front, and also the county commissions understood up front what they had to work with from day one if the commission and or the citizens decided that they wanted to have this happen. Okay, you were next. Then you. Deborah.
Can you hear me now? Okay, all right, better, okay. So this is only going to apply to owner-occupied property. And in Yankton, we have a lot of vacation ownership. We've got a lot of folks that live not only in a different part of South Dakota, but also in different states. And they may only be here, well, we got a situation where only maybe like 2 weeks out of the year, and then the house is vacant. So is that still owner occupied, even though it is only used 50 weeks or 2 weeks out of the 52 out of the year?
So there is I can't fully answer that question for you. It would depend on a resident by resident classification, but there are rules and laws about what qualifies as a owner-occupied home and what doesn't. So I can tell you that in the instance, if you owned a home, I'm just going to use an example here, but if you owned a home in Yankton, in the city limits of Yankton, and then you owned in South Dakota, the same person owned a home out at the Missouri River, That's a terrible example because the Missouri River runs right through here.
The Black Hills.
Let's say the
Yeah.
Black Hills, thank you, Nancy. Let's say you owned a second home that you traveled to and utilized in the Black Hills. You can only claim one owner-occupied residence. So you would not get any relief on your second home in the Black Hills. You would have to pay full and true property taxes on that. No relief would ever come to you. Now, in the instance of somebody who has a home here but doesn't live here very much, that's the technical part of the question I can't answer. We'd have to look at the law on what qualifies as a owner-occupied residence and what doesn't, and how you can claim, you know, I don't know what the rule is if you have a house in South Dakota and you have one in Florida, if there's a way to distinguish between the two, because there's really not, to my knowledge, a check-in or check-out button on how many nights you actually slept in what home in what state. So I can maybe kind of partially answer your question, but that would probably be a Department of Revenue inquiry.
I'm just worried that we're going to be giving property tax relief to a lot of out-of-state owners if there's not some mechanism to check.
Yeah, I don't. I
There
do
are
know.
rules, and you can talk to our director of legalization, she can tell you what those rules are. So there are rules, and you can talk to our director of equalization, and she can tell you what those rules are.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah, owner occupied in the state and the county of Yankton, but I don't remember my county portion is. So in counties where there's a high tourism, potential income here, is it possible that the revenue raised on the sales tax increase, the half-penny increase, will exceed the county portion of the owner occupied taxes, and therefore you're essentially there's a limited benefit you can get as a home?
So I think that would be very hard to have happen. Nancy sent me a few examples of some, what I would call, you know, kind of mid-level homes in Yankton, in county, out of county. That would be highly unlikely to occur in Yankton County. Actually, I think that would be highly likely to occur in any county in South Dakota. It's just, it's not gonna generate that much. So unless you guys really figure out how to start drawing in millions of tourists into Yankton County every year, that's not gonna happen. Good question. Go over.
How are you going to do this? Like, I'm at the counter to buy something and someone else at the counter to buy something and you're from out of state and I'm out of county and how are you going to discern that or how does that work?
So that one I know well because I actually own a few businesses who charge sales tax. So across the, let's say Yankton County did this, across the board, everywhere you go in the county, no matter who you are, everybody is going to pay the additional half penny. No exceptions. Doesn't matter if you're from France, if you're from, you know, Aberdeen, if you're from wherever. It doesn't matter. It's applied across the board. Every month, then, at the end of the month, all your businesses, we remit sales tax via ACH to the through the Department of Revenue, and then they would know, okay, this all came in from Yankton County. They're going to take that extra half penny off, and that's how they track it. So they would know exactly how much dollars would go into this property tax relief fund that would be sent to the county to pay for the county services, and then you as a homeowner would no longer pay that portion that would be taken off of your property tax. Yeah, good question though. Yep.
any other percent of the counties do, we're gonna be.
So I can only answer that in the form that I am not aware of any county commission that has come out and said we are absolutely 100% passing at this time. Most other counties where we have members are in the same spot as you guys. You're learning, you're discussing, you're trying to figure out what is the true benefit to this, what are the pros and cons. I couldn't tell you at this point in time. I do think that it's probably pretty logical that there are going to be some county commissions that would obviously probably adopt this because it's going to mean a significant difference to the people within that county. But the question really comes back to, and this is what nobody knows the answer to for sure, is how much extra are you gonna pay on the half penny? So what it really probably comes down to is how many people can you get from outside of your county to come to your county to leave that extra half penny here? Because that's really ultimately your true savings. Because you're all gonna pay the extra half penny if you put this on. So the question is, how many people can you get from Aberdeen and other places outside of Yankton County like me to come in here, drop money, and when I leave, I just help buy down your property taxes? So I will tell you the interactive map is I think it provides a pretty good educated guess. What it does is it provides the educated guess on what SB96 would provide in the form of tax relief. But what it doesn't do, and nobody can do, is how much money is it gonna cost you to get that relief? Because you really have to take the projected savings versus your input and subtract your input versus the projected savings, and that's what it ultimately does. I do also want to point out one thing. I forgot to talk about this on my note. I want to make it very clear that, as we all know in life, most things in life do not tend to get less expensive. They generally tend to go up a little bit year over year. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that if you guys enact this, and any county enacts this, that doesn't mean that your property taxes aren't going to still go up. Because they're going to get bought down, and you'll have a year where you'll be like, wow, hey, last year I paid $5,000 and this year I paid $4,000. This is great. What was that?
There's a 5-year sunset on this also.
The 5-year sunset, it goes away?
Yes.
Okay. It could go up because things are going to get more expensive. It gets more expensive because again, this only controls the county portion. Okay, school districts still going to get more expensive. City portions get more expensive. So when they set those budgets, that figures out how the mill levies go, and that's what happens. So just want to be very clear with everybody that you're going to get a one-time, probably pretty healthy reduction, and then you could have a slow tick up, year over year, which generally happens. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Where? You? Was there another one? No. Okay. Hey.
Following up on the lady's question about, you said about the Department of Revenue would take money, so wouldn't our sales receipt, like say I go to Ace Hardware, it's gonna say South Dakota sales tax, city sales tax, and then it would say county sales tax? Would it be put on my receipt instead of the state deciding what percent we're taking?
That is a great question. I hadn't thought about that. Nobody's asked me that question. I don't know if there'd be an additional line item for county sales tax on there. I don't know how that would work. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, good question, but I can't answer. Yes, I do.
Julie Alp, representative, District 18. I don't know if everyone in this room is studied on the sales tax relief bills that up in here, we also, your taxes are already going up to 4.5, starting July 1, because that 0.3% decrease that we gave you years back is actually sunsetted, and sunset was going to come off. So your sales taxes are already gonna go to 4.5 statewide. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about another half a penny. So it's gonna bring your sales tax up to 5%, and then on top of it, you have your city tax. So your sales taxes are already gonna go up that 0.30%. Those dollars are gonna get put into a fund, and they're gonna actually come back to you to lower the education levy that is subject to each and every one of your property tax bills that you receive every year. So that money will accumulate for an entire year, and that relief will not come till next year. So there's already a measure in place to reduce this property taxes here in South Dakota. So these were companion bills. In order to pass one, we had to pass the other. So before we implement or burden another tax upon the people, we really need to think about what we're doing. Okay? That's all I have.
Yeah, that was, the companion bill was Senate Bill 245, and the link that I have has it, that's included on the estimate as well, on the educated guess, and it actually breaks each of them down. It's projected that 96 would do this, 245 would do this, and here's the combined total. That's all I'm going to talk about 245, because I said at the beginning that I was only going to talk about 96, but that's a good point. Okay, I think it's John's turn. Talk about something else, right?
All right, thank you very much, Mike. Can we give him a warm round of applause? So the next topic that we wanted to be discussing tonight is the road and bridge levy. There's been a lot of conversation recently around Yankton County's budget, and there are two task forces that have been set up. One to look at the kind of the short-term financial, are there things that could be looked at differently from a budgeting perspective, and the other one is taking more of a longer-term, longer approach on economic development and what might that look like for the long term. And so we have asked John Marquardt, Chair of the Yankton County Commission, to speak today on the road and bridge levy and both sides of that conversation. There are materials that were being passed out at the table. If you need something, Lauren is passing those out. So if you could please welcome John.
Obviously, I'm not quite as technical as Mike is, and I just got a piece of paper, a couple pieces of paper that we're going to talk about tonight. Is this on yet?
Yeah.
Okay, so as Nancy mentioned, I want to visit with you from the county commission aspect of this, and it's an issue that I can't remember when it was implemented. I think it was 1997, 1998. The road and bridge levy. SDCL 101213 lets County Board of Commissioners levy an annual property tax to pay for maintenance, repair, construction, and reconstruction of county roads and bridges, and to build a reserve fund for that purpose. Now, I just want to start out with a few, and if you got a copy, I was hoping there was going to be a lot of people here, but I didn't expect this many, so I didn't print that many copies. But just a few county ridge and bridge statistics. Yankton County has just over 500 total miles of roadway. 252 miles are paved, 249 miles are gravel. There are 79 structures, bridges or culverts, and I just want you to understand that a lot of the bridges that were possible to be changed to culverts have been changed to culverts. And our current highway budget is $5.5 million. That's down about $3 million from previous years. So what the statute does is the levy is set by the county board, not automatically by the state. The money is restricted to roads and bridges. and related to the reserve fund, which means that the county can make sure that all the bridges and roads are fixed and can build up a slight reserve to make sure that for future repairs and bridges is taken care of. South Dakota Department of Revenue describes the levy as being outside the property tax limitations. The maximum levy rates. The maximum rate depends on the county total taxable valuation. If the county has less than $1 billion of total taxable valuations, they can charge at up to $1.20 per thousand. Between $1 billion and $2 billion, it's 90 cents per thousand, and more than $2 billion is up to 60 cents. Yankton County is over $2 billion in total taxable valuations. So how we're looking at adopting this is the county board must pass a resolution by a 2/3 vote before July 15th. The resolution must be published within 10 days and at least twice in a legal newspaper. Voters can refer this to the November ballot if we do it by July 15th. How the 2026 levy works in practice, if a county already has this levy, obviously you can read that. We can lower it at any time, but we cannot increase it without another board and a resolution. One important related rule, obviously, is that municipalities also get 25% of that levy that is levied within their municipalities. Gayville, whatever property tax is levied in Gayville, will obviously get 25% of that revenue to increase or fix their roads and bridges also. Same way with the city of Yankton. The couple other functions, the reserve fund established by South Dakota County Road and Bridge Levy holds significant importance for financial security for the county. Planned improvements. In order to get certain grants from the state of South Dakota, the Yankton County has to provide a 5-year road and bridge plan improvement. So we already do that. Project continuity, having a reserve fund helps maintain continuity, enhance project management. Counties can prioritize and schedule maintenance. Public confidence, it makes, hopefully, it leaves you as residents of Yankton County confidence in our highway department. And then cost efficiency, by having a reserve, we can purchase things in advance at a normal cost rather than an exuberant cost. Other than that, South Dakota County Road and Bridge Levy serves several essential purposes, primarily focused on maintenance and improvement of transportation infrastructure. That's really about the nuts and the bolts of the whole levy proposition. Page 2 is going to give you a little bit of a breakdown, and these are numbers from 2025. So our property tax value is $2,905,572,271. There's also a utility property tax that gets added onto that. It's pipelines that are run through Yankton County, highline wires, utilities and things like that, of $71 million, for a total taxable value of $2.977 billion. That's a huge number. So this levy would say that Yankton County, at a total value of $1,000, is $2,977,000 at a levy which we're allowed at 60 cents per thousand. So Yankton County could actually collect through the levy $1.786 million. The municipality's share of that would be $446,603, which would leave the county's share of that levy at $1.339 $1 million, which in perspective would pay Yankton County's portion of the Johnson Bridge bridge that is being replaced right now, without taking any funds out of the general fund for Yankton County. And then just a couple other items, I just put some numbers together. If your house, owner occupied, is $322,000, the levy would increase your property taxes by $167.48. At a $482,000 home, you're looking at $245, and $960,000 home, $490. So this is an avenue or a tool that is provided by the legislature of the state of South Dakota that counties can look at increasing their road and bridge budget by the number that I presented. And it's a general revenue stream that we can count on every year that is going to improve roads and bridges and not take funds out of our general fund, which has been happening in the past. And I presented this yesterday to another meeting, and I said, you know, for years, like I said at the beginning, I think this was somewhere around 1997, 98, this was implemented by the state legislature. And I can't imagine that commissions previously didn't look at something like this. I mean, it's very important for revenue streams for the counties. I kicked myself in the ass for not thinking of this 3.5 years ago. But 3.5 years ago, we had COVID money, so we had plenty of money to do what we needed to do, and it just wasn't a topic of discussion at that point in time. But I think that with your approval, it's going to be on the agenda for our June 30th. We're having a special meeting June 30th to have this on the agenda. I think the county commission is going to implement it. Like I said, we've got to implement it, sign the resolution. We have 10 days. We got to report it. We got to put it in the newspaper twice within those 10 days. And then I'm thinking that the public has 21 days to refer it to the November ballot. If it's not referred, it's going to be implemented on July 1. Hutchinson County just did it. They're below the $1 billion amount, so they implemented $1.20. They're going to collect about $1.2 million for their roads and bridges, and they implemented this in 2023 without a referral. So I'm hoping that we can get something done here, and any questions, any responses to this, I certainly would like to hear that. Ryan is here this evening. I haven't heard anybody, we've been talking about this for about a month, probably, is that about right? Have not heard any negative reports from it, but if there's any questions this evening, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I just want some feedback to see where you think, as constituents of Yankton County, think we should head. But I think, earlier Mike talked about cutting property taxes. This is going to increase your property taxes. Going to increase it with a levy of about 60 cents per thousand. I'm thinking that the SB96 is going to decrease your property taxes by about 2/3 or a third. So this is going to be an increase, but at the same token, it's going to be. We're going to definitely look at SB96 also as a county commission. We're just not quite under the gun yet for that. But the road and bridge levy, we need to address that by July 15th so that we can implement it on January 1 for next year's taxes. Any questions, I'd certainly be glad to answer them and open it up for discussion. Yes?
My name is Mike Nutley. I'm from Turkey Valley Township. My question is, 25% of this will go to municipalities, how much will go to organized townships?
I believe that's included in that 25%.
It is.
Organized townships, I believe, is included in that 25%.
It didn't say that I read anywhere. It just said municipalities, so that's why.
Organized townships have the ability to enact a road tax. Doesn't necessarily give them the road tax.
But this here.
As it would-
Right, and you're already getting a tax as an organized township. You're already getting a portion of those taxes.
As is everybody else, as, you know, but we already opt out as a township and take care of our roads. I'm just saying, the unorganized half of the county, this money will be spent on those gravel roads, but we don't get anything unless we tax ourselves further.
In state law, there's many references, and you have to reference every one of those state laws to find out who is fully covered and who is not. I would suggest to you, John, that looking through that this is an enabler probably for some road districts that we have out by the lake. That you will be.
Road districts are not included in this.
They're not included in that, but it's referenced in state law. It makes references in the state law that you just read a little while ago. It references those other particular taxing entities, and you have to go back and see what they are. State law is not as simple as reading what is stated there. You have to make the reference, read the reference that it is referring to when you read that state law, so you know what the hell you're talking about.
SDCLO 101213 lets a county board of commissioners levy an annual property tax to pay for the maintenance, repair, construction, and reconstruction of county roads and bridges, and to build a reserve fund for that purpose. That's the law. That's the law. That's the law.
It's been amended a number of times. We didn't hear any cons on this. All we heard was for it.
Yep, that's something that we can address as part of this presentation, as far as what would happen potentially to the county budget if we don't implement this. But I just happen to have this that lists the townships. It's the from Department of Revenue. So I'm just going to give you that copy from March of 23, and it talks about that. So that's something that you can take back to your township board and decide, since we don't have that specific information tonight. So John, do you want to touch on some of the negatives, or maybe Doug Eckern, who's also here, who's leading the task force, could talk about if this is not implemented or that additional revenue is not available, what might the county's budget look like?
So part of the negatives, as Nancy mentioned, is we can use this it'll end up being $1.4 million to the county's budget for road and bridges improvements, which means that at the end of the year, we're not taking $1.4 million out of the general fund and applying it to the highway department, which always happens. So I see this as a plus, and like I said, it can't be a negative, because we're like I mentioned earlier, if this would have been implemented 2 years ago, we would have been able to pay the county's proportion of the Stone Church Bridge outright and not have to take anything out of our highway budget. So I would like any other input from any one of you here. We're having a special meeting June 30th to either make this a resolution. The resolution will be motioned on the 30th. And if we have any issues that need to be discussed before that, let's discuss them. But with the way things are going as far as Yankton County's budget, I think this is something that needs to be looked at. And if
John?
I'm gonna just state another negative, is the fact that I'm a city resident. And I think that this is probably a good deal, but,
It's on, yep, I can.
but the point is this. Now, this is an enabling piece of legislation for other districts, number one. Number two, it's enabling for the city as well, because I already have a linear charge on every foot of frontage property I have, as does every other citizen. And that is now gonna be repealed, so I'm gonna be double paying on that. And that just kinda irritates me that the city is gonna get money out of this. It's not gonna go to the county, and I'm already paying lineal frontage fee every year on my property, and so is every other taxpayer in this room.
As far as the city goes, I don't know how they distribute the
It's
funds.
a special
that they're gonna-
assessment. It used to be a road tax. They used to call it road tax. It's a
The
special.
city
now.
is gonna get 25% of this money to apply to roads and bridges that are gonna be replaced in the city, within the city limits.
I'm paying it already on my lineal frontage.
I have a question over there.
No, I have a comment.
Comment.
Pat Cerny, and I serve on the James River Water Development District Board. That James River, of course, you know, runs from here clear up to North Dakota. And we get, every meeting, we get all kinds of requests for help and funds. We were very proud to give money to the Stone Church Bridge because it was well needed. Especially when we figured out how many school children were involved in their longer trip to school every morning because the bridge was out. These are the kind of things we have to look at as neighbors. Because as neighbors, we have the money that comes into the James River, but we have to look at it as neighbors from here clear up to North Dakota. I think it'd be a lot better off if we could dam up the James River so it didn't cause so much trouble, but that's not an option. We have constant degradation in our culverts and in our bridges. We try to fix it before it becomes a major project. And this is something I really think is something we ought to look at. It's neighbors helping neighbors, because we give money to the small communities, we give money to, well, the only money we put into Yankton is gauging stations, because I insisted on water quality, not water quantity. I wanted water quality to see what was coming down the Martin Creek. But anyway, I think we really have to look at this in the road deal, that we need to help, because our farmers need those bridges, our school children need those bridges. We've got to help one another.
Thanks, Pat. Doug wants to mention something here.
Thanks, John. A couple of things I'd like to add, that the Finance Task Force has been looking at in terms of Yankton County. Brian Hunoff gathered some really great data that looked at comparable population size counties in South Dakota. And our tax burden in Yankton County was the second lowest of the counties that we looked at. And we all don't want, we'd like to have lower taxes, understand that, right, wrong or indifferent. At least in comparison to our other counties of similar size in South Dakota, we have one of the lowest tax burdens. The second issue that I would like to point out that we talked about yesterday at the Finance Task Force would be, if the road and bridge assessment does go through, we would ask that the county commission have the discipline that instead of that 1.4 million going to the road and bridge fund, now it's gonna stay in the general funds because it doesn't need to be transferred. Don't look at that as a new pool of money to start new programs and services and spending on other things. You're gonna need those dollars for cash flow purposes going forward. So you gotta have that discipline to not look at this as a new.
There's a lot of good information here, and I don't know, I understand it all, but the one portion that says the maximum levy rate, and I wrote down $1.20, can you go in with maximum, or can you pick another levy rate?
We're obligated by the codified law to do the 60 cents because we are already over the $2 billion taxable valuation. So it's just the 60 cents per thousand is the rate.
But can you choose something less than 60?
We could choose something less than that, obviously, but then we can't raise it without another resolution.
But you can reduce it.
We can reduce it, yes.
How many, current projects in Yankton County have been put off in the last, say, 5 years? Because you got a 5-year plan. How many of them have either been put off or decided not to be done for one reason or another? And how quickly would those be added right back to the list?
I can't guarantee how quickly they would be added to the list, but I can tell you that 292 north of Irene, from Irene to Highway 81, is basically been put off, because it was on the 5-year plan to repave or refix last year, and the money's just not available to do that. And there's several other road projects that have been put off because we don't have the funding to do them. There is a calculation that we've come up with on the county for double chip sealing and fixing some roads, but that incorporates a special assessment for the people that live along those roads. So, yes, there's been several, I don't know the exact number, and I can't say that if we have this $1.4 million generated to the Road and Bridge Fund, I can't say how many of those projects are going to be re-looked at or whatever at this point in time. It'll definitely help improve looking at increasing road construction and maintenance on those roads.
John, I forgot one thing. And I don't know, I forgot one thing. In dealing with the water, the Department of Water and Natural Resources for many, many, many years, and going in on different projects throughout the state. The one thing comes out, the more money you have for your base, the more money that they are willing to generate and give from the state level. And that's just been the way it is. When they go in there and they'll say, well, how much have you given from the local level? How much have you raised your water rates? How much have you done this? How much have you done that? And you can show that you have really tried and you have really worked on it and tried to put your funds together. You get more money out of the state.
So one other thing that I'd like to mention is Yankton County we have 4 big bridges across the Jim River. 3 of those 4 bridges are basically ready to be condemned. The Stone Church Bridge, if we didn't do anything within the next few years, the Stone Church Bridge would have been closed. Would have had to have been closed because you couldn't even drive a school bus, just like Pat mentioned earlier. Couldn't drive a school bus across it. You could not drive a loaded fire truck across that bridge legally. They did it every day, whenever necessary, it was done. But those are the kind of things that we need to look at for future uses also. So we have 3 more bridges across the Jim River that are almost as old as the Stone Church Bridge that are going to need to be replaced within the next 5 to 10 to 20 years. So this is a program that I think Yankton County needs to take advantage of moving forward. And if the number is 60 cents a thousand or if it's 30 cents a thousand, it really doesn't matter. It's something that we need to implement so that we can look forward to future repairs on our roads and bridges.
I believe Frank had a question.
Frank?
Just quickly, Hutchinson County swept the road and bridge funds for years. I don't know if you guys know this. They picked up almost $3 million, and they put it in a special fund. You know what that fund was for? For a new courthouse. That didn't have a darn thing to do with roads and bridges. And what happened is, are you gonna have a safety valve so that your county commission doesn't put it in some other fund that has nothing to do with road and bridges? So you know what they did? They went out and got it voted on, and they put another special levy on for the carryover money that they spent on that. They already, if you understand, and that just, it was legal, but it wasn't right. Are you guys gonna put something on to prevent that?
South Dakota County Road and Bridge Levy, SDCL 101213, lets the County Board of Commissioners levy an annual property tax to pay for the maintenance, repair, construction, and reconstruction of county roads and bridges, and to build a reserve fund for that purpose. That's what we're talking about tonight. There's no, we're not looking at taking this money and building a new courthouse.
Are you gonna put that in the right somewhere?
It's right here. It's right here in the law. Any other questions? Hearing none, I'm gonna turn it back over to Nancy, and I think we got a very interesting conversation coming up.
Well, thank you, Chairman Marquardt, for that. In all fairness, if anybody, because Gary did point out there are a few negatives, is there any other ones that anyone wanted to point out that is a potential negative on this road and bridge levy? Because I want to make sure that both sides, because John did a good job of talking about it, but there's obviously, with him sitting as a current county commissioner, he's voiced his support for this. So I just wanted to make sure there was equal time. If someone, since Gary already shared his, does anyone else have anything they wanted to share? All right, hearing none, we will move on to our third topic of the evening. We're going to talk about data centers, utilization of them, what benefits they might have. What we are not going to talk about are any specific details associated with any projects that might be happening or might be even being discussed happening in Yankton County. Scott may not be aware of all of those details that are going along with that, so it is not fair to be asking questions specific to any project being discussed. He has some general information that he's going to be providing, and we would like you to become educated on the pros and cons of just data centers, how they're utilized, and just learning more about it, because there are a lot of myths out there. A lot of states do it differently than South Dakota does it, as far as our PUC and how some of the rates are regulated. And also, data centers, hyperscale, large size, are dramatically different than the impacts of some of the smaller ones. So this is Scott Sandel, and I will let him go ahead and share a little bit more about himself and this project. So thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you. All right, I'll begin with, anytime anymore I hear the word data center in any conversation, everybody immediately runs to a camp. They're either for it, love it, or they're anti, hate it. And it's that fast that everybody jumps in a camp. And so tonight I'm gonna try to go through some information about it, a little background about myself, just so you know. Originally born here in Yankton. My wife Heidi is here with me tonight. She was born in Wilmer, but she grew up in Irene, so just up the road. So we're both South Dakota natives. Recently I just found out that even though I was born in Yankton, grew up on a ranch out by Faith, that's where I was adopted and grew up, I was actually a biological family of the Villa family that lived in Freeman for several years. Dr. Jose was my grandfather, lineage. So we're not from out of town, right? This is where we live. We lived in Yankton for several years, go all the way back to 2008, and I do say all the way back in this industry right now, it's all the way back to 2008. I was working at Stockman's Livestock. I was doing RFID for animal traceability, and that kind of didn't go anywhere, right? That didn't go anywhere. And so at the end of that, I started thinking about, okay, Gail, it's Fuller at the time, owned Stockman's then. He asked me if I wanted to buy Stockman's. I said, well, let me think about it. And I said, nah, I'm gonna do something else. So Gail and I parted ways at the time, but as I started thinking about what should I do? What should I do next in my life? We were living up by Lesterville at the time, Heidi and I and our 4 kids. Started thinking about what could Yankton have that could fit in the community in 2008 in an economic downturn after YAPG at the time had raised funds to do some project. What that project wound up being here was the data center out on West City Limits Road. I designed, built, and operated that for some time, okay? So that takes me back to where I started in the data center industry, okay? Everybody know where that building is, or even know that building was here, right? It's been an operational data center for Midco for many years now, since 2008. Since that time of building that data center and getting out of that, I have toured and worked with data center companies in 50 states and 110 countries around the world, okay? So I've been out to see a few players. So you've seen some very small ones to some very large ones, all over. So the very last slide that I have tonight, we'll go through some of the places that I've been. One of my favorite pictures that you'll see is the Maldives. Anybody know where the Maldives is? Anybody heard of the Maldives? Anybody here to engage? Right? So the Maldives, I had a chance, Heidi and I, so they called up and said, hey, we got a data center we built in the Maldives. Why would there be a data center in the Maldives? Anybody? Because we as a society can't even go on a vacation in a beautiful place like the Maldives and not have our YouTube, our TikTok, our Facebook, or whatever it is. We've got to bring it with us. We are that society, okay? So that's why we went to Maldives, to help them build their data center so they can deliver content to all the vacationers on all the islands. They have one on the main island, Maui, that's where we did our project, and then one on the top island, okay? So, leading into that, back to the 2 camps, what I found in a lot of conversations that I've done so far on this topic, because what I found in the last 12 months, so about 24 months ago, I could sit down with a group of buddies, we'd have some beers, and I'd tell them what I did for a living, right? So I go to data centers, we put software in, we track all the power, we track the water, we track everything about the facility, where all the assets are, blah, 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 blah. Only to sit down with them the next week and they'd look at me and say, now what do you do? Why? What is this thing, right? To all of a sudden fast forward to today, or anybody who has YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is now a data center expert. That's where this has changed, okay? So, as I started doing some of these talks, what I found more frequently to do is not to address, and I will address for those that don't know what a data center, because as I've done some of these talks, people are like, hey, you're talking about a rack? I don't even know what a rack is. You're talking about servers, you're talking about this. So I got some slides that will kind of show you that. But what I'd like to lean in on, back to the comment about the Maldives, why do data centers even exist, right? Why did I build the data center in Yankton in 2008, right? That leads to a different conversation, okay? So when I go into that, I ask a very basic question of people, because we did a project, my wife and I, Heidi, in Lenox, where we live now. I've been on the school board there for about 10 years, signed up for another 3 years, then I'm done, I'm out, that's it, no more. Okay, another 3 years, we just did an opt-out, so talking about your property taxes, love it. But we did a project with some high school seniors where we did this topic. What is data centers? Why do they even exist? To get to that question, anybody remember checkbooks? This is a different audience, right? Anybody remember that first duplicate check where you could no longer have to put it in the registry, right? Right? Anybody use Venmo this week or any other pay app between somebody, right? I'm getting a much different response than I got with high schoolers, right? With high schoolers, they're like, what are you talking about, duplicate check? What are you talking about, checks? Like, we have a checking account. Yeah, I have Venmo, right? That's where we are today. They have Venmo, right? That's where they live. They don't live there. Another one, when I talk to high school students versus a group like this, right, is, anybody remember when we were in high school? I remember going to high school, getting my physical. And the nurse would come in and write on the clipboard, and there's always that distinct sound where she'd drop that clipboard into that little pocket on the outside of the door, and then you wait for that to come out because that's when the doctor finally showed up, right? That you know about today. Today we're laughing, doesn't exist. We have my charts on my phone, right? I get my report, my test on my phone, right? Okay? That's what the students understand, okay? Again, you can just go on. So one of the high school students that we have actually is going back now to ask all the school board members, city council, county government, what has changed from the time you were a senior in high school to today in your career. And he's doing a video recording of all those questions for those to create a profile of us, our generation, right? And this will all come together as I go through the slide deck and kind of show you what I'm referring to. So we start to understand why data centers exist. They are to deliver that content that we need immediately. Anybody logged into your bank and not got to your bank account right away? Kind of piss you off a little bit because, hey, I need my balance now. Or your investment accounts, whatever it is. That's what data centers deliver. In this, with the students, I could not have written this script better, but it happened to us during the digital age. We call it the digital age. We started with the data center club, but we turned it into the digital age club because it was a little softer blow for the communities that get into the two camps. So on a Wednesday, I asked SDN to come in. Gal came in from SDN to talk to the students about how fiber gets to our high school. How does that even happen? What is the network? We had natural gas come in, we had electric come in, we had construction come in, but this particular time we had SDN come in and talk about how fiber gets to our school. And our superintendent, Adam Shaw, happened to be there that day with me, again, being on the board. He happened to be there, and I just kind of jokingly said to Adam, do you know what would happen to the students, to Adam and I, if we decided not to live stream a football game? If we just said, no, we're not live streaming them anymore. You imagine what would happen to us on Facebook? What we would get slaughtered for, right? So, fast forward to that coming Saturday is prom. Guess what we didn't do? We didn't live stream the Grand March. Guess what happened? Somebody takes to Facebook. Well, it's too bad the Lennox School District couldn't stream Grand March because I couldn't make it. That's, again, the society that we live in. So, that's where we talk about why data centers even exist. It's to deliver that content. So at the heels of that Wednesday being the conversation with SDN, that following Saturday being Grand March with the posting on Sunday, that following Monday we actually took the students to SDN's data center in Sioux Falls, and they took a tour of it to understand what the complexities are inside of a data center. Okay, so that's what I like to ask, is not what is a data center, but why does a data center even exist, okay? Then we can kind of get into, well, what does it take to exist? That's where you hear a lot of the news right now around power consumption, water consumption, not that many jobs, true. There's a whole list of things that go into a facility depending upon how it's designed, right? Depending on what it looks like. So the data center that I built here years ago was a 1 megawatt facility, because that's what we could have at the time. I think it could be increased now, but that was a 1 megawatt, right? Keep that in mind, because megawatts are turned into gigawatts, right? Also, so is data. Okay, and then I'll get a little bit into the future, because I'm gonna touch on tokens. Anybody know what tokens is? Token society, right? How to utilize tokens? It's gonna be a question, it's gonna be a challenge. Okay? So, data centers. Everybody, anybody familiar with data centers in general? And the whole concept of them. Got a good, solid expertise in here? Okay? How many of you have been in data centers? 5 data centers, 10 data centers, 100 data centers, 1,000 data centers. I have. Okay? So, I'll break it down. The basic concept of data centers, and I threw up a little gateway computer in here, just for those that don't understand it all. Everybody remember gateway computers? Little cow boxes? That's where I started in data centers. was way back in Gateway. I did document management systems actually before that in '95. I was in Home Federal in the bank there. But so to start with data centers, basically you're talking about computers. That's it. It's just like your home computer, right? Sits there, operates. So what we do instead, you would take a bunch of computers. First, for high school students, I put on here, just so they can see it, is right here, if you have any children or grandchildren that game, that is a liquid cooled PC. It has water cooling in it to cool the processor, so while they're gaming, because it gets really hot, and then it exhausts the heat out. Okay, keep that in mind. It's a gaming PC, just like your computer, like your laptop, but because it has a GPU in it, it gets way hotter. And this is just a gaming PC. I have kids that have them. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's just another cooling method. Air can't cool it enough to let it play. Okay? So we take computers and we put them in racks. Racks are some of them are about the size of this Yankton Thrive sign here, and about the size of a 2x2 tile. Some of them are getting a little bit bigger. So we put them in racks. Now you can see on the far left, your right bottom corner, is the same concept of what we're seeing today. A liquid cooled server as opposed to an air cooled server. The data center built here is just an airflow. It has airflow in it because the pressure of air can remove the heat off, just like your laptop, can remove the heat off of the equipment fast enough that it doesn't overheat. When you get GPUs in there, it can't do that anymore. It has to have some other heat transfer to come off of there. That's why those little liquid nipples there with the hoses coming in, that brings liquid across the motherboard to cool it down across the processor, okay? In that high school group, one of the things we also looked into, they want to invest. They're not necessarily interested in data centers. So one thing that I told them to look into investing is quick connects. Because inside the data centers right now, every server that goes into one of these GPU cabinets has a little quick connect on it. So there's an abundant need of those. There's companies out there that make them. So just look into those for investment opportunities, right? Because that's the things we wanted to explore with the students. All right, so then we take those computers, we put them in a bunch of racks. We put those racks in rows or in pods, right? So we have pods, and those are racks facing each other, okay? And then we put in containment. So we either have hot containment or cold containment. If the computers are looking at each other, then sometimes we'll have air that goes under the floor, comes up, and you see those little grates there? That's where air is pressurized underneath and comes up. That creates an air flow system. Because even with liquid cooling, we're only cooling it to 85%. The remaining 15% still comes from airflow, okay? So we put them in a pod, those doors close. Okay? And then we put them in a big room, okay? That's several of the rooms I've been in. Now, we get into campuses. Campuses get a little larger. So the data center here was designed to be a multi-building. When it was here, it could have expanded out to be 5 more buildings there if we wanted it to be. Again, at size. Again, I like to have this little picture up here more for fun of it because that's where I started my career, frame downstairs at Home Federal, running banking operations. Okay? So getting the general idea. Anybody follow along? I have a computer, then I have a bunch of computers. I put them in a storage shelf or cabinet. I put those cabinets next to a bunch of other cabinets. I have a row of them, then I have 2 rows facing each other. If they're both the cold aisle, that's where the computer takes air in and spreads it across the system. I'll contain that, and that will be a cold aisle. Otherwise, some places, you get into AI systems, will contain the back aisles, okay? They'll contain the hot air and try to get the hot air out, okay? Any questions so far? So what's happening? Why is this becoming so controversial or so interesting, I guess at this point? Is because the data center that I built here, it all goes to the size of the rack. By the size of the rack, I mean the amount of power that the rack will consume. So the rack design of the facility here, when I built it, is between 1 and 10K per rack. That's the max that it can run at, okay? That's the standard GPU or CPU type server running. Today we're seeing racks, I kid you not, I've seen them, a 1 megawatt rack. That building, remember I said it was designed at 1 megawatt for that 5,000 square feet? I'm seeing a 1 megawatt rack that exists, right? They're starting to build more of them. So that's where it all comes to play. So the bigger the building, the higher density of the rack is where does the technology, where do the resources come in to cool these things, to keep them operational, right? A lot of technology into that. This all making sense? Any questions? Feel free to stop if you have a question at all as I go through it. So what happens? So if you think of that last picture, as the racks get hotter or get more dense in power draw, we have different technologies that go into those, right? So it used to be I could push air through it, the fan, and cool the things off. Now I can't. Now I gotta have a rear door. So I'm capturing on the back of it, literally it's called a rear door heat exchanger, where I put basically a radiator on the back side of it, right? And that's taking it off just like like your car radiator. It's just taking the hot air, exchanging it out through the loop, and bringing it back in, okay? Then you get to the liquid cooling. That's the liquid route. Now, what's happened, right? The question that everybody gets into is what technology is being used and how much water does it need? And that's where you can go through all the practices of a data center and how they were designed originally and how they operate today, right? NVIDIA just came out with an announcement yesterday that they have designed a system that removes all water needs from a data center, period. Will that be true? Don't know.
I didn't hear what you said.
The NVIDIA, so the NVIDIA GPU maker, they came out with a message yesterday, a news article, that say they have come up with a solution, their Rubian, that's gonna remove all water out of data centers, period. Is that true? We haven't seen it yet, hasn't hit the market yet, right? Elon Musk says we're gonna put them in the sky. I believe him. We're gonna put them in the cloud, right? We're gonna fire in the cloud, we're gonna put them in the sky. He's gonna put them, and there's a philosophy around building those and how it works. Really good YouTube video, I know I joke about YouTube. Really good YouTube video on that philosophy and how it's gonna work and the array of solar panels required to make that happen, okay? So back to this, the new technology, and that's where the challenge comes in of the two camps and why I like to present, there's middle ground. There's absolutely middle ground. If we firmly believe that we cannot design a solution that does not require water in a data center, then we have a bigger problem in the fact that we don't think our students are very smart. And I have a problem with that. I have a very big problem with that because they can do it and they are doing it, okay? Now, any questions on power density and how it climbs together in the technologies? Good? Again, I can see in the room, there's camps, right? Everybody's jumping in camps.
Scott, I have a question.
Yes.
So is the water system, is that a circulated system, a closed system, or are they open?
I've seen all kinds of systems. I've seen it where they have water, right? So I've got some customers who are using millions of gallons of water a day. Absolutely have them. Yep, new water, palatable new water in there, wherever they're located at, in their system, the way that it was designed when it was there, that's the way it is. I have other customers who are completely closed that are using only a few thousand gallons a day, right? In the exact same power design, because their closed loop system is keeping cool enough and they're using ambient temperature outside because of where they're located at most of the times of the year, so their actual water usage goes way down. So it's how it's designed. That's where the question comes in. So as data centers come to town, it's how they're designed that you have to ask. What are you doing? How are you designed? How are you going to change with new technologies as they come in? Right? Good question. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just a comment that, just to wrap people's mind around on what that power consumption is, like 3 kW would be equivalent to like the your heaters plugged in at once. They're about 1.5 kW.
Yep.
2 of those would be about 3 kW. So now if you quantify that, give you an idea of what consumption is.
Yep. The 1 megawatt facility here, when I built that one rack there is equivalent to about 5 homes, right? So the whole data center, the 1 megawatt is designed at around about 1,500 homes, right? So you can do the mathematics to go up from there. So they are hungry. They're absolutely hungry, right? So laws are changing around power consumption. I'll show you at the very end of this. I got a few things that have just changed just recently to actually kind of not offset that, but help that, okay? And again, I've only been in this industry, again, since I built the data, well, I've been in IT for 30 years, some years. Graduated at Dakota State, so I love the industry, the technology industry, because it keeps changing. A little quick story, the time that I built the data center here, there was another data center being built in Sioux Falls. That data center in Sioux Falls was designed with 0 water. No water allowed in the facility at all, right? That was the architectural design. The company's design for healthcare, you can't put water in. City said, no, you can't. You have to bring water for employees. They have to have toilets, they have to have sinks, they have to have whatever, right? I find that kind of interesting and funny because you flip it around to today, the conversation that's being had with the Sioux Falls City Council is, you only get water for people, toilets, right? That's all you're gonna get. You're gonna get no other water. That's in a 20-year span where we went from you have to put this in to you only get to put this in, right? That's how this industry changes itself over and over and over again. Okay. Next thing is just advanced cooling systems. There's advanced, so my wife Heidi, and this is where I look at the job opportunities that come with it, and I know there's an argument, a facility doesn't bring many jobs. True, the facility doesn't. But around the facility, as I have created, since being here, I have 40 employees within the southeastern Sioux Falls area. 4 of them reside here, and I'm looking to bring more here in Yankton, okay? That support this infrastructure. They support, so my wife Heidi, for 15 years, sold power strips. That's it. She supported the sale of power strips from our house to these facilities.
Good stainless.
Thousands and thousands of those power strips going out so they can monitor the actual power consumption. And I'll show you at the very end of this why some of that is important now. But you could actually gauge the exact power consumption of every IT device, as well as the thermals, the environmentals, temperature, humidity, pressure, everything else, off of these power strips. So they're extremely intelligent type of power strips, okay? So that's where cabinet containment exists, as well as the technology to manage the environmentals of the facility. So as you start talking about, we need transparency of these facilities, that's where it starts. What intelligence exists in those racks to get that information out to even be shareable, okay? Then you move up to the newer technology on your right-hand side there, that's the liquid to chip kind of technology for cooling. Now, this is the metrics that you want to pay attention to from the Gartner report. What and how do we measure the consumption of what data centers utilize? And you're going to hear words like WE, which is water usage effectiveness. You're going to hear PUE, power usage effectiveness. You're going to hear all kind of effectiveness, but it really is for everything that comes in, how much goes out. And that's going to be, anymore we're talking in the world of tokens, right? If I put power in, I get tokens out. That's in your AI facilities, okay? But this is just the sustainability metrics when I'm doing and working with my customers who are trying to report to their bosses and up to any other entity. What power or what metrics means that I, as a data center manager, am managing a data center efficiently, okay? That's your metrics. And it all starts with where is the intelligence, and that's where I work today, our software company. That's what it helps all of our customers gather. How many assets do I have waiting to go into the room? How many are in the room? What is the consumption of those? What is the da 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 da? And it goes on and on to report on everything that's available, okay? That's where I make mine. Now, this slide just really quickly references the dark blue line is what I talked about before, non-AI. So remove AI completely out of the picture. That blue line is us as consumers. We're driving that blue line need of data centers for everything we're doing. Recording, right? City council meetings are recorded and streamed. Our school board finally this year started streaming and recording our video, our meetings just this year. Not because we have to, community wanted it. Right? Go back to streaming of football, prom, whatever it is, right? That blue line represents us as consumers demanding it in everything we do. Okay? This one is an interesting one to me because I'm questioning as communities push back and as data centers which used to just be a net new in the world. For 20 years that I've been in it, just net new spaces created anywhere, right? Then communities started pushing back. And what happens when communities push back? Demand and supply goes down, right? And this isn't just a Yankton thing. This is, I have customers in Denmark, I have customers in Dubai, I have customers in Saudi Arabia, all going through the same thing. Where do we find net new space? Where can we build more if we need more? What's happening to the co-location, the enterprises that are inside a co-location data center is they're getting squeezed. Meaning, if I'm inside of a co-location like like Yankton here, in that building, and my lease is coming up, right? So I'm renting rack space in that building, my lease is coming up, somebody is already knocking on the door at that facility saying, hey, I will pay you double the price to get the power that you have there to put in my racks. So the demand, the supply is down, demand is way up, and we're looking at a window here where my simple question is, you can disagree, you can agree, but a very simple question that I have is, if we start to crunch on the availability, the word token, you're gonna keep hearing that in the news. The word token, and token just really means we're putting power into a building, it's going through GPUs, and out comes tokens. It's just the processing. It's a way of creating a unit of measurement, okay? Don't think of any, there's a lot more difficulties in it than that, but it's a way of just having a unit of measurement that I have access to tokens, all right? My question as we go through this and we get pushback on it, good, bad, indifferent, ugly, however you want to look at it, will tokens become inaccessible and unaffordable by everybody that wants them, right? So if tokens are inaccessible and unaffordable, Heidi and I have a son who went to Johns Hopkins, is doing research on ALS early detection, uses a lot of AI technologies in their modeling to see what's happening, and he decides to come back here, not at Hopkins anymore. Will he have access to tokens to continue his research? Or will he not be able to afford those? Don't know, but it's a question to ask as we go through some of this, where do we find a balance for everybody, okay? And that's what this is saying here, right? This is saying that the number of tokens that is gonna be required is gonna go up 24x by 2030 based upon current demand, because people are trying to figure out. The other thing that they're trying to figure out, right, is FinOps. FinOps is, just because we have all these tokens and access to all these tokens, are they even creating value? Like, why what I'm doing with them, are they creating value to my company? And if they're not, why do I need so many tokens? So there's both sides, right? You gotta look at it from both sides. Will we have access to them? But what do I do to make them usable, right, to my company? So it's a balance, it's a balance. All right, and then comes the dilemma. This is what happened in the last 24 months. For me, the data center world, we've gone from millions of dollars to billions of dollars to I have a customer who's just talks in trillions of dollars, right, over in the Middle East. They will build anything, anywhere you want them to, right? They throw a needle at the desert, they'll build it there, okay? I've been in the data center, in the desert, and I always joke, I had to go past 8 camel farms to get there. Kind of joking, actually true. Had to go past many camel farms to get to this particular data center, outside of Abu Dhabi. And it's only 1 of 5 they have. And they got bombed in the war, just FYI. So this has hit Main Street, right? You guys are here because now you're interested. I could not have gotten 5 of you in 2008 to sit and listen to me. Could not have done it. It just wouldn't happen. Nobody was interested in data centers. Today, I go to rooms like this all the time because this conversation is live and well, because we're trying to figure it out, okay? So we have pushback, right? This is right here in Sioux Falls. They want to come in and put in, a couple land speculators want to come in, they bought the land, they're trying to get it prepped for somebody to come in and buy, right? So we're having it right here, this kind of conversation. But change is ahead. It's a data center world, it's the IT world, there's always inevitable change. So to kind of wrap this up, you guys are talking about an ordinance. North Dakota just announced they had a whole consortium of people get together and build out a master framework of an ordinance for North Dakota. I think we can copy that. I think we can look at that some way to say, what did they build out that we can bring down to South Dakota? right? They got a lot of activity, so what can we follow? Okay, it's not a bad idea. Maybe it's a dumb idea, don't know yet, it just came out today. Another one, Virginia. Anybody heard of Data Center Alley? If you watch any news, you've heard of Data Center Alley, right? Data Center Alley, Virginia just enacted a 0.01 cent kilowatt hour tax on all data center electrical use. They feel that it will bring about 600 million into their coffer just by taxing electrical use of data centers in their state. They enacted that now, right? They didn't touch their sales tax. They didn't do anything with that because they have an incentive program already for those companies. But they put a 0.01 kilowatt hour tax on data center electrical use. Not a bad idea. All right, we're looking for revenue. Looking for revenue. If you got a data center, tax it, I guess. I think you're gonna see more of that. This one I found really interesting. So this is out of Pennsylvania. Times Leader put together 196. I gotta look at my notes here. And I've aged up, so I gotta have glasses. All right, this one in Pennsylvania, there was 194 landowners that came together. Those 194 landowners grouped together 4,000 acres. That 4,000 acres is sold off to a data center. But in that sale, or in that agreement, they made off pretty in that 80% of that land remains greenfield. They only get so much to build their campus on. So landowners, 196, got together and said, hey, I'll go into this pool, I'll go into this pool, I'll go into this pool. And they're building a very large data center, gigawatt size, not megawatt, gigawatt size on this land, okay? This is my last slide. I'll take any questions after this, but this is some of the fun that I've had over the years. My kids have gotten to go with me. Like I say, up in the upper left-hand corner, that's the Maldives I went to. The bottom right is Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Been to the Australia data center. Actually funny, because I did the Sydney Water Project in Australia, and they have a really cool water system, technology system built up there. Alaska, and then of course my first one was DreamWorks. That was one of the first facilities I worked in, was DreamWorks. And the list goes on and on and on. Like I say, I work currently today with all 50 states with data center providers and 110 countries, all trying to answer the question, am I efficient in the data center operations that I have today? Questions? Fire away.
Is there enough funding in the technology world for data centers to operate without any tax incentives from the community they come to?
Okay, the question is there enough monies in technology companies to fund without any tax incentives? Did I get that correct? Yes, is the answer. Now, the question is probably more around AI, because those on that blue, kind of the demand of your TikToks, those are fairly well stable, right? Your banks, your hospitals, those that need data centers, they're well funded, right? The question goes back to the tokens, right? So as the rapid growth of AI data centers exist, will companies find value in those tokens that they're using in whatever processes they're trying to implement AI? Enough value, they're willing to pay the companies that are building out the infrastructure, the data centers, right? So that's really where the question around what a bubble lies. And you're seeing that in the stock market today, right? The stock market today, a lot of tech stocks, they're taking a step back to look at it saying, hey, are companies getting value in the organization with AI? Some absolutely say, yep, I've got a benchmark that say yes, others haven't seen it. So that's a bigger question around, are those technology companies that are kind of propped it up right now around infrastructure build out of the large facilities, are they not in a bubble, right? Will AI pan out to be the hope that it is to be? It's a great question, but if you're talking just the basic technology companies like the banking apps that I've worked with in some of the data centers, you go to any small town bank, they go back to a very large data center company, they're very well stable, right? So it just depends on who that organization is that's building the facility again. Does that make sense? Help a little bit? Again, it comes back to also some of the fun that I had with the high school students, because they're talking about investments. And some of the companies they went and looked at, I'm like, okay, they look really good on the stock market, they really do, but they've never made a profit, right? So you gotta study it a little deeper to make sure that, yep, you can catch a good ride there, but is it a long haul for you, right? So it does vary depending on what the company organizations are, but some of them very well funded to start with. Very good question, because it's on everybody's mind. Yes?
I think the primary question is the power.
Yes.
Where is all the power going?
Yes, okay, so the question or the topic is power, and it's the big one. It is, of course, the biggest one, right? So there's kind of a couple components there that I'll lay out. One is under today's infrastructure, right? If you just look at what the utilities can provide today, what can that infrastructure provide and support without any changes? So in Linux, we did a study. We helped Linux do a study, we just gave them the results. So they have a baseline around how much power do you have today that you could give to a data center with making no changes to any infrastructure and still allowing growth within the community at the current paces that it are, and maybe a little accelerated. So we did a quick study for Linux so they could say, yep, this is your current power, right? So we'll take that side, the current infrastructure that exists and what the tolerance is there. The second one is around more of the bring your own power mindset. So if I'm gonna build, I gotta ranch out by faith, right? So if we're gonna build a data center by faith, will new laws allow me to bring my own power, whatever that might look like? And that's behind the grid type of power, and what regulations have to go into play, and that's being played out all over, right? So when I go to the Middle East, that's not a problem. The king says, put it there, you put it there, and everything comes to it. In the US, we gotta go through all these regulations, loopholes, and whatever to figure out where I can put power or create power, right? The third component to that, to power, is how much unutilized power is already in a data center. Because I work a lot with customers who have built out their whole infrastructure around, let's say 10 kW, back to the kW design, 10 kW per cabinet, but they're only using 2 kW of that capability. So that they have what we find in our software as stranded capacity, unutilized power in that building, right? So it's a three-part factor. One is what does current infrastructure give us? Two is what will we do to be able to bring or create new power behind the meter? A lot of people are gonna talk about SMRs or small nuclear reactors, kind of that's where everybody goes in that conversation. Today we use a lot of natural gas in those kind of answers. That's kind of the bridge between pure electric versus on-site generation being natural gas. And then of course the third one is just finding, and my customers are deep in that now, finding where is all my stranded power in all my locations. How do I find it? How do I reuse it in our facility? So it's really a three-part from what I'm seeing in the industry. That answer? It's a lot. It's a big one because it is. Where does the power come from? And then what transmissions and whatever else has to play into that. So we think of the grid as the grid is today, but in other countries they're building it out differently. They're building it out as like microgrids that are supporting it locally for their needs. Again, back to what do we want to provide to whom, right? Yep, good? All right,
So
next.
to build a data center in Yankton County, who uses it? People from all over or just Yankton County?
So so the question is, if a data center got built in Yankton County, another one, I built one, another one, right?
Yeah.
So the facility that I built is so the question is it a co-location, an enterprise data center, or is it an AI factory, or an AI data center? I don't want to use factory. So what is it?
It'd be a bigger one like some of your pictures than the one you have out on West Salem Road.
Just depends, right? It depends on, again, going back to the power question, what could be supported, right? So if you look at the substation, if I can't bring in new power, net new power, I can't bring in a new plant, I can't bring something else in. So I'm tapped by the capability of a substation, right? Without bigger build out, whatever. So then maybe it's not, maybe it's only 10 megawatt, maybe it's only 25 megawatts of capacity. That is 25 bigger, yes. And in that model then, if it's 25, it's still not some of these where I have customers who, like Meta starts at 150 megawatts and up. That's their designs. Like a home builder, they have models for 150, 200, 250, 300 gigawatts, right? So who would use it? Who would use it is the question. It really comes down to who's building it, right? So up in North Dakota,
Plot Digital builds the building. Then they lease that space out to another entity, okay? And that entity brings in all the IT equipment. Then that company leases out those GPUs to yet other companies in each one of the halls. So they're 3 deep in the layer of who does it. So it could be the design of the building is really the question. Is it a co-location, which could be just redundant? So Yankton, that's why I built it here when we built the one in 08. It's perfect distance from Sioux Falls for redundancy. So if I'm a Sioux Falls business or an Omaha business, I have great fiber here in Yankton that I could put my DR facility here in Yankton. And if I got like whatever happened, tornado, flood, whatever, then my data center is good here because I have redundant places to go with it. Because everything in the data center world is about redundancy. So it comes down to those kind of 3 basic models.
Bank that uses it? Or
Could be a bank, could be. Oh. Yeah, sorry, okay. So it could, so if it's co-location, like the one here, banks are in it, hospitals are in it, small businesses are in it, right? But if it goes towards the AI type, then they rent just the GPUs, and so it could be different entities that rent it as well. So it's more, think of it more like like an apartment complex. And the apartment could be either a cage, they could rent the whole room, the whole building, right? Somebody could take the whole thing. Somebody could rent a cage in there. So in this facility here, one of the banks came in from Sioux Falls and rented the back room. And that was their whole space. They rented out, and all the racks in there were theirs, right? And another one might just rent like 5 or 6 shelves, if you will. They're called U's, but shelves in the rack. They may put their servers and only need a half of a rack because that's all the bigger they are. So think of it more like a scalable apartment where you can rent whatever size you need out of that. You can rent the whole thing or just 1 or 2 servers, whatever you need, or you could rent compute. That's a whole different game too. Yes?
Maybe a multiple voice that question. First of all, how much water would a typical plant that you're looking at, or that would be looked at Yankton, how much water would that take a year? Second, in the history of AI facilities, how many of them have failed and gone into bankruptcy?
Okay, so it's a 2-part question. One is how much water would it utilize? Would a building utilize? And so the question can really only be answered once you know what the design of that building is. What technology are they bringing in? If they're doing a water solution through the whole building, or if they're doing a closed loop with glycol, right, through the system. And then it gets into where are they going to build it and what is the ambient temperature throughout the year, because that also maintains what we call free cooling in the industry, which is during so many days of the year, because it's cool enough outside, I can run those loops far enough outside that it cools it naturally without having to run any kind of water or thing to cool that, like your home, like your air conditioner, right? I can open the windows, just let the ambient temperature keep it cool. So it really comes down to how much water they're going to use, is how big is it, and what is the cooling technology they're bringing in. Then, and only then, you really get the answer to what they're going to utilize.
I'm on the county commission.
Yep.
If my only interest in this is what does it give to the county?
Okay, so, but you had one more other question in there first. Now, before we get to the county one, you had, bankruptcy, yeah. So how many, the second question is, how many current AI companies that are building data centers have gone bankrupt, right? Or gone out of business? None yet, because they all get gobbled up. Because the demand of power by the larger entities, if you're failing, I'll buy you out in a hurry, right? That's the methodology. Because they're, again, going back to the co-location, they're already knocking on the big players' buildings, saying, hey, if you have any tenants coming up end of contract this year, I'll pay you more for their space, because they're after power, right? So to date, none, but you're seeing stocks play a little bit today, right? What is the true value of this AI thing? And that's gonna play out in time. I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I would not be standing here. I'd be on my jet back to Maldives, right? So that is a huge question, probably the most important question, is AI gonna create a value enough that it will pay for itself, right? So that's where we'll see. I don't know. I do not have the answer to that number, like how many will in the future. Now, third question you had was, what do I see as a benefit to a county, right? What do I see as a benefit to a county? I love what Virginia just did. I think in all of our studies and our talks that I've talked with people, we need data center tax, period. Just a point blank data center tax. You want to build here, we got space, everybody wants you play like Pennsylvania did. Maybe the neighbors want to pull together and put some land together, put a data center tax on it, then divvy that thing up, right? That 1.01 cent tax that Virginia put in there, that $600 million that's coming back to the state coffer.
How much?
$600 million is their estimated budget. 600 million on that. Now, keep in mind, they have Data Center Alley in the middle. The way to kind of put Data Center Alley in perspective from a rural point of view, if I have 10 head feedlot, nobody will notice, right? If I buy 40 acres, put 10 head out there, nobody's gonna notice. If I put 100 head out there, neighbors might ask a few questions. If I put 1,000 head out there, yeah, now I'm gonna get some interest. I put 10,000 head out there, somebody's coming over, right? So that concept is what you're looking at Data Center Alley. Very similar to the Kansas feedlots, right? If you go to the Kansas feedlots, there's miles and miles and miles, right, of feedlots out there. That's the same thing as in Data Center Alley in Virginia, is just data center after data center after data center, right? So you put that into perspective, right? So to the county, right, like Lennox, what we came back with, sales tax today, because again, back to the incentives, I think the incentives have dried up for data centers around the world. So number one is sales tax of the equipment. So I'll give it to perspective. I was in Aberdeen a week ago, looking in a room, where a bunch of racks are sitting, they're all AI racks. Each one of those racks is $4.5 million each. There was 70 of them I was looking at, okay? So each one of those racks landed at $4.5 million, equates out to be quite a bit of sales tax. Right, back to the community. We do.
It's only from we don't get that sales tax because it's not bought in the county.
Nope. When we land PDUs, you pay sales tax where it lands on IT equipment. So every rack PDU that's sold here in Yankton County gets sales tax on it. Okay? So that sales tax is one possibility. Then you have use tax. Power, you have water, you have fiber, natural gas, right? All those have a tax that come with them, right? Those are all great and dandy, right? And we can debate all those all day long. I personally support just a straight up data center tax, like Virginia did, right? And tracking that, because if we can track that consumption, again, if you want to hear, every community out there thinks they're the target. Every community right now, I go to every one of them, think they are the only target around the world, not just here. I had a conversation the other day with a company who was saying, gosh, I'm deciding between Denmark, Switzerland, Dubai, and Denver. Trying to decide where am I going to build my next facility. It's not just here, folks. It's everywhere. Where is their power? Okay? So those are the potential taxes, right? Now we can debate all night long about how they'll come to fruition or whether they'll come to fruition, but those are the things to look at, to investigate. Right here first. Go ahead.
What's the, I understand, but the original plan, technology continues to change.
Yes.
You have the capital intensive on the front end, what's possibly process.
So if I'm hearing correctly, the question is, what is the longevity of the building itself, or the longevity of the IT equipment? Because they're two different.
Technology has changed all the time, so we start up.
The technology of which component? The power, the water, the IT equipment, the software inside of it?
The IT equipment.
So the racks themselves. Okay, so the IT equipment. Okay, so the traditional rule of thumb. So the question is, what is the longevity of the IT equipment that goes inside the data center, the servers, the switches, and that kind of thing, right? That's the question. Yeah, okay, so and then how has that changed over the last 10 years? I'll even take you a little further back because I was just in a data center that was kind of interesting to me. So Moore's Law, if you want to go to history, like 36 months ago, Moore's Law would have told you that IT equipment refreshes every 5 to 7 years-ish. That's about the lifespan. Some people will squeeze that a little bit further. We saw rack PDUs, they'll go maybe 10, 12 years on the rack PDUs, the monitoring strips. They'll push those 10, 12 years, and then they're getting end of life and have to be replaced, right? The IT equipment, the servers and switches, traditionally are that 5 to 7 years. AI, whole different game. We have no idea at all. It could be, we're seeing some of this stuff because it's a few months in, few years in. We don't have an idea. We have no idea. Some of it has been running for 5 years now in some of the facilities, but new technology keeps coming out every year. NVIDIA brings out their next whatever it is. So that technology becomes a new technology, right? So currently, people estimate that probably an 18 to 24 month churn on some of that AI equipment, right? But what's happening in the industry is different than what you'd think. Traditionally, if I'm running a data center, co-location here, I'm gonna take that equipment, I'm gonna take it up to SIEM. SIEM is gonna destroy it, throw it in wherever it goes, and away it goes. What we're seeing the AI is they're taking those servers back to whoever the vendor was, Dell, Supermicro, whoever, they're rebuilding them and then sending them back out to another facility. So there's more of a churn cycle of that physical chassis than there was ever before. So the longevity of it is a question that's not answered, because that server is not just going to a landfill somewhere, it's going back to vendor, being rebuilt and sent out to another place with new GPUs. Okay? And I track those. That's what our software does. I'm tracking 4 companies where every GPU you have is based upon serial number. That's what our software does on top of the power consumption. So that happens there. Now, to the building itself. The building itself, again, goes into how do I take that building with new technologies coming in to get the longest life out of it, right? I have one customer who just this week, because they used to be a mainframe shop, anybody remember mainframes? It used to be a mainframe shop, so they had a liquid cool system already built out in their building. They closed it down when they moved away from mainframes and went to client servers. That loop is being revitalized now for the AI racks. So that facility that was headed towards end of life just got a new life, right? There's stories like that on both sides of the equation. I have customers who are taking things and shutting down, decommissioning, and others that are not. So that's a great question around longevity, but there's various unknown answers at this point. Again, that's what our software does, is we track every asset, every component that is serialized from vendor to floor during utilization and back out the door. And then if it comes back now, we're tracking that in our software. That's what we do in our DSIM. It's called DSIM, Data Center Infrastructure Management Software. Okay?
I just want
Gosh,
to
yeah.
address the kilowatt hour tax that
Yes.
you, electric cooperatives already have to pay that on every kilowatt hour that we sell, and then also at the retail level and the wholesale. So are you suggesting that would be a tax on top of?
I am suggesting that would be a new tax. I personally am suggesting that that's a Scott Sandel
Yeah.
opinion,
No,
right?
that's,
But
because that is a tax already. So already
Yep.
there would be, and that primarily goes to the schools. We pay that directly
Yep.
to the counties now. So that would be a direct benefit without any law change already, that tax would be collected.
Yep. And I haven't got a chance, because all this stuff that I just showed you, those news things, are within the last 24 hours. So Virginia just announced this, right? So I haven't got to dive into I haven't got to read the actual law to see what they put in place, but I think they're onto something. I mean, they are Data Center Alley, right? So they're onto something, and the data centers are willing to pay it, so why not look closely at it, right? So to me, it would be, my opinion, it would be another tax directed at just data center buildings. Okay? Go ahead.
One of the hot buttons for the data center discussion is noise.
Noise.
Can you speak to that?
I can speak to that. I can speak to that because in some of the data centers, including the one I was just in last week, when you go in, the noise isn't where you think the noise is. The noise is inside the room because them are really loud screaming GPUs, and they require by ordinance that you wear earplugs when you go into those, right? But the noise that we're talking about really is the outside cooling system, right? Those fans that are running, either the generators, the fans, whatever they're running at, right? So again, it goes back to the size of the building. What is going to be the setback in an ordinance? What is tolerable, right, based upon the size of the facility and how it's spread out across, and then RUD ordinances. In the industry, they're testing out ideas around why do I have to be, traditional data centers are up 24/7 because we as a society want our stuff immediately. But AI data centers don't have to be. So why run them 24/7? Now there's a money initiative to it, right? But do they have to run, and can they be ran during certain times of the day and not require backup generators? So then you just have the sound of the fans, and if they're placed in the right places where there's fiber and power, would they be palatable, right? So to address the sound, right? Again, you hear a lot about sound because of Data Center Alley. People go there, or the large mega facilities, and I always equate that to if I go out to Kansas and I go driving through the feedlots, it's not quiet, right? It's pretty loud. I've weaned a lot of calves in my life, and I know the sounds that start coming in that time where ball run goes, right? So there's the same kind of sentiment. So how do you address that? Again, it's going to be setbacks, new technology, all the above to address those. But the biggest places are the ones where there's mega data centers or multiple data centers together, a cluster, if you will. Okay. Yeah. Oh, ahead. No, go ahead. It was back there, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I think this is the perfect time to address that, since you brought up setbacks and noise ordinances. Here in Yankton County, we do not have any setbacks for any type of a data center. And when we're talking about the noises they bring, they could possibly bring some use of water, an extra, we need to have setbacks for data centers in Yankton County, and we don't have them. And a moratorium has been introduced to the county commission, and the county commission's kind of kicking that can down the road. We need to address that so that we can get to work and allow, if we're going to allow data centers into Yankton County, we need to have fair setbacks so every property owner has a right to use their property, and there is access, of course, if there is a need for a data center, but we all need to respect each other's property rights, just like for instance, that cattle feeding facility, a CAFO, they all have ordinances. And right now in Yankton County, we're trying to shove data centers through using a service establishment clause that we have in our ordinances, so that we don't have to do any kind of a consumer use permit. We can just issue them a building permit, and the people in this room will have no awareness of a data center coming in. So I do think we need to push for a moratorium, take a breath, get some ordinances in place, and make sure that we're doing it right for all property owners in Yankton County.
Okay.
So I just want to say that, I don't think you were here when I started, Julie, we're not talking specifically about Yankton at this meeting. Those are comments that would go to the county commission. This was a lot of general information and not specifically to what the county is doing on the moratorium.
That, Nancy, but I think it's really important because all he's talking about is the pluses of data centers.
I'm not talking about the pluses. Don't go there. I'll take you on. I will. Don't go there. Don't go there because I'm giving you information about data centers. Since I've done this one, I've been in thousands of them around the world. So I'm giving you information. I'm not giving you all the pros. I'm not giving you all the cons. I'm just telling you about data centers.
Correct.
So don't go there.
So if we're gonna talk about data centers, and we're gonna talk about how you can tax them, we should probably address what they can cause to the county that's not good. That can be a problem, that can be an issue, that can be, and that same thing as we deal with CAFOs, with wind industrial towers, with solar farms. I mean, I think that we're all in an educational system across all these new technologies.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important that we have ordinances in place that protect both the property owner and the data center. And we don't have them in place in Yankton right now.
Right,
And
that's
so-
exactly why I brought up what North Dakota just did, right? I think there's something there. Again, that is 24 hours old, right, off the news press. I think there's something there that we have to read. I really do. That's why we did in Lennox. We went to the city council and we said, hey, well, the council came to me because they're like, hey, you know stuff about data centers and we really don't know anything about it. So they came to me. So we came back to them and said, hey, let's just study what we have. Where's even a starting line for our community? Now we know. Now we know exactly where we're starting. Now on top of that knowledge, we can build an ordinance. The city council, that's their job now. Go build an ordinance about what you knew. If you want me to sit back down with you, happy to do that, right? But at least they now know that if a 25 megawatt data center walks into Lennox, can't happen without a whole new upgrade to the infrastructure of power within our community, period. Now just outside, in the rural co-op, it could happen, just across the district line from the Excel that provides to Lennox to Southeast that does, it could happen, right? At 25, but that's not in their jurisdiction. That's somebody else's, right? So in the city of Lennox, they now know what to do, where to start, and we'll continue that conversation. But that's my point at the very beginning. Everybody runs to a camp. I'm gonna go stand in this camp, and you're dead wrong. Then they come over to this camp, and I look at them. Nope, you don't know anything about what I'm talking about. We have to find middle ground. Why? Because we're not the only place. They are looking in every community around the world. Like I say, the king outside of Abu Dhabi, he just throws a dart on the map and they start building them there. Not a problem. You want a data center in the middle of the desert? I'll bring anything you want there. We'll take any data that you want to share with us, right? Do we want that? Because they're happy to keep building. Do we want our American data in those facilities? Don't know, but it's worth asking, right? Very much like worth asking, will tokens be available to everybody? Very much like worth asking, do we want our data stored in other countries that may not like us, right? So all these questions have to be asked and have to be analyzed and worked out together, right? Then you look at the facilities. What is the setbacks? I think Brown County has one that has a mile setback. Is that adequate? Well, that kind of stops everybody, right? I also think if there's a decision made, because community pushback exists, that you won't support a facility because they're inexistent, you won't support one, token tax. If you utilize AI and you're not willing to support the infrastructure required to deliver it, what about a token tax for your usage in that community? Possible. Go ahead.
I have a really quick question, like just kind of like, you know, looking at this, you have lots of experience in data centers, you've seen a lot of them.
Yeah.
You've talked a little bit about like cases where you found things, problems or something like
Yes.
that. So you think about all the data centers you've seen, could you describe like the worst ones? Because you know, that's, I think when I'm thinking about the law, I'm thinking about how do we keep the bad actors out, you know?
Yes. A bad one is a railroad company that I worked with in Atlanta. They're burning through millions of gallons of water a day, right? Right out of the city water system, right out. But they're a railroad system, they've been around forever down there. And they're like, hey, we had a well, we turned that well off, and now we're just piping off, right? Again, transparency is the key to it, right? So once we decide, okay, what are the bad actors? And the way that I describe that a lot of times to people is, again, my cattle life growing up, there was a time in history, many of you probably remember, when we built a feedlot, we put it on a hill. Why? Because it worked. It worked. Then at some point in our industry, in the cattle industry, we decided that's not the right thing to do, right? And that's what's happening in the data center industry right now. Is all those things where we're in a rush to build, rush to build, rush to build, you're having an industry take an entire step back. You really are. Saying what practices were bad? How do I need to be more community focused? How do I need to be more involved? And you're seeing that some are playing it from a political aspect, but that's also why I love to come have these conversations, because there are those, absolutely. So that would be the first one I talk about is transparency in managing or monitoring what is being utilized. Reporting requirements. That's what I don't see in any ordinances, is here's the setbacks, here's the problems that we're gonna do up front, but who tracks that? Where is that reporting Where is that reporting within that ordinance? I'm seeing that nowhere, right? But it's happening. Michigan is looking at a mandatory, well, in Virginia, mandatory power reporting. The facility in North Dakota, they have to, again, through our software, report their actual power consumption on a weekly basis to their utility provider by agreement, as well as what their growth is gonna be on a month-by-month basis. Okay? That's the other piece of the equation we have to put together as well. Not just the ordinance and setbacks, but what do we want to know ongoing about that facility once it's built, okay? Other bad ones. Well, the one in the desert, obviously. This is a horrible place to put anything. The sand that goes into that, and it is out by itself. You literally just kind of come through the sand dunes and there it is, boom. It's a 7-building campus that's there. It's a very large campus. And they have 7 of them, campuses. So it's a 7-building campus. They have 7 campuses that you find throughout there. That's a very bad design. It uses the power, it uses cooling. They have to desalinate water out of the ocean in order to use it to cool the building. So many bad designs in that one. Size is a big one. Size of a building that people have built, probably a very bad design that I've seen over the years, is I build a 100,000 square foot building. I think I'm gonna use 25 megawatt, and I've divided that up between these 4 data halls. And guess what? Data hall 1 uses all the power. So data hall 2, 3, and 4 have no power. So they're just these gigantic open spaces. I have a customer in Kansas City. They have a 60,000 square foot data hall. So the building is much larger. The building is a couple 100,000 square feet. Data hall is 60,000 square feet, designed at about 3 megawatts. That 3 megawatts is used in 10,000 square feet. They have two 60,000